The best leader is not the expert leader. The best leader is the self-aware leader. Today, we're going to jump into 7 signs that you might be a bad boss. It's going to take a little bit of self-awareness. Are you ready? Hang on with me. Let's do it. Hey there, friends. Welcome back to the Culture Keepers podcast. It's me, Kara List, your leadership coach. So glad you're back with me today. I hope that you were able to catch last week's podcast about what to do if you have a bad boss. If you did not check it out, go ahead and listen to it. You don't have to listen to it in order to listen to today's podcast, but they kind of go hand in hand because today we are looking at the 7 signs that you might be a bad boss. And here on the Culture Keepers podcast, we are all about having conversations that empower leaders to cultivate thriving workplace cultures where their teams are happy and high performing. And so as you can imagine, being a bad boss is counterproductive if you want a happy and high performing team. Being a bad boss is counterproductive to being a culture keeper. So what I want to say is when I say bad boss, I don't mean to have this all-consuming, condemning way of coming at you with saying, you are a bad boss. But what I am saying is that there are 7 signs we're going to talk about today that might give you a clue that you are on a path that you want to turn around. You do not want to keep going down that path. And I can tell you, in my 10 plus years of executive leadership, I have found myself in seasons where most of these 7 signs could have described me. And so I am coming at it saying, we are in this together. We are imperfect people with the goal of leading other imperfect people. So if we can be self-aware, then we can be great leaders that make a great impact. So go ahead, take a deep breath. Get ready to be a little self-aware. This takes work, but we're going to do it. Here we go. 7 signs. Number 1, are you feeling like your people are being less productive and less creative, and all the ideas are dependent on you? Number 2, do you feel like people are kind of silent in your meetings? Are you experiencing more silence? Number 3, do you feel interpersonally shut out? Maybe even the people are avoiding you. 4, do you feel like things are not growing? That your business, your teamwork, whatever it is you're doing together is a little stagnant, and you kind of think it's because your team is just lazy or they're just not being risk takers, but because of that, things are kind of stagnant. 5, do you see burnout on your team and also see that people aren't taking any time off? Number 6, do your team members email you a lot, like repeatedly? Do they have to keep emailing you in order to get an answer from you? And number 7, when you sit down with your people and you ask how things are going, do they only share the things that are going well? Or are they open and quick to share the things that they're struggling with or the things that they're frustrated with? Okay, so those are the 7 signs. We can be done, right? All done? Nope, we're just getting into it. So here's what I did. I took those 7 signs, those ways that bad bossness might be showing up in your people, because we can more readily see the results in our team than we can identify what we are doing. So now I'm going to kind of do the vantage point flip, and I'm going to take those 7 examples and I'm going to categorize those issues as a kind of boss. Here we go. So the first one was, are you noticing that your people are less productive and less creative, and you feel like all the ideas have to come from you? And friend, if you feel that way, you may be the first kind of boss, which is the micromanaging boss. I think we have all had bosses that are micromanaging. And even though we can all say we've had those bosses, I don't know if I've ever had a boss that has admitted to being a micromanager. Have you ever admitted to being a micromanager? Because I'm just going to take a moment to say right now, I struggle with micromanagement, and I saw it in the workplace. I see it at my home. It is much quicker and much easier for things to get done my way. I know the way I want it done. And I can see immediately, like every day in my kids, how that keeps them from being productive and being creative because they've learned like mom will just do it for us. And it's just a vicious cycle. The more we do it, the less engaged our people become. And then we look at them and we think they don't have any ideas and they're not being productive or creative. And I have to be the one to fuel this because that is the culture we have created. You know, when I left a leadership position, the person who came in after me had mentioned that they could feel this on the team, that I did the team a disservice by holding their hand too much, by micromanaging them too much. And you know what? They weren't wrong. They weren't wrong. And sometimes when we are the micromanaging boss, we can look at our people and think that they were the wrong people on the team because suddenly we're not getting that productivity. They seem to be disengaged. And oftentimes it's really us that are creating that pattern of behavior. So the second question I asked was, do you experience silence in your meetings? And if you do, there is a chance that you could be the defensive boss. This is also a super easy one to fall into because we're all people who get triggered by feedback. Feedback is any way in which we get information about ourselves. And when we get information about ourselves, it triggers a response. And often it triggers something called an identity response, which says, I can't hear this information, I can't receive it, because ultimately it makes me feel like a failure. It makes me feel like a terrible person. And this is when people start to get quiet in the meetings, because when they say something, we take it as personal feedback to our identity. It could be not even about us, but we tend to do that. And over time, those reactions, those walls up, that defensiveness, people just don't. They get tired of it. They're just not going to do it anymore. And so instead, they just will not speak. The third question I asked was, do you feel interpersonally shut out or even the people are avoiding you? And if so, this might be a sign that you are the corner office boss. The corner office boss, someone who knows that you have worked your whole life to earn leadership. And so with that, you feel entitled to be in your corner office and not in the trenches with your people. And most often, I don't think it's an arrogance thing. It's not that you think you're better. It's that you just don't know how to have relationship and authority, right? To be able to say, I want all your ideas, but you're not making the calls. You're not making the decisions. And so that causes us to stop collaborating. And that makes us look like or feel like the corner office boss to our team. The fourth sign was, do you notice this stagnant environment where there isn't any risk taking? Like you feel like your people aren't growing, they're not taking risks. And this might be a sign that you are the rear view mirror boss. Oh, this one's hard, guys. This is where when something bad happens, when there's a mistake, where there's an error, we blame. We look back in the rearview mirror and we focus on what happened instead of a solution on how do we move forward. Instead of recognizing that we can't really change, we can't at all change what happened. And so instead of focusing on it, blaming, trying to figure out who was the cause, we should just move forward. But we can't because we're looking in the rearview mirror instead of solution building straight ahead. So I have an example of this. I was at a Dunkin' Donuts once and I ordered some donuts, some Munchkins, donut holes. I'm on the West Coast now. There aren't any Dunkin' Donuts. That is so sad. And I got them and they weren't the kinds that I asked for, which is important when you have little children in the car who are depending on the kinds that they wanted. So no big deal. I had time. I decided to just park the car and walk in because I was going through the drive-thru and just say, hey, these are the ones I ordered. Here's the ones I got, just get a fix. It wasn't a big deal. Like it really was not a big deal. Well, the person who was servicing me at the counter turned to the person at the drive-thru window and was angry and was like, how did you get this order wrong? And then she turned to someone like at the donut case across the way and then was like, no, it was you. And they actually did this in front of me. Like they went back and forth, 3 people just like blaming, 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 blaming. It was insane. I wanted to very politely interject. It's okay. Like, it's really okay. Can I just have the chocolate ones, please? Like, the 3-year-old needs the chocolate ones. Can I please get the chocolate ones? I did not care who was wrong, who was to blame. They were so stuck looking in the rearview mirror what happened that they couldn't look ahead to the solution, which is, how about we get this lady some chocolate munchkins to satisfy her 3-year-old, right? That was the solution. So those rearview mirror bosses focus so much on blame shifting that people no longer feel safe making a mistake. They're terrified of making a mistake. So if you are scared of making a mistake, you will not take a risk. And if you do not take a risk, you will not grow. Another sign is that if your people seem burned out, but no one's taken a day off. And if you find this happening, you may be a workaholic, boss. Ooh. So we can't help but equate hours with work, right? Like if I only work 2 hours, I struggle to feel like I worked enough or that work was good enough. And that is just not the case. So oftentimes we work so much because we feel like a lot of time equates to a lot of work or a lot of good work. And when we do this, when we don't demonstrate rest, like healthy rest, like taking a day off because you are allotted that day off, our people feel like they can't take a day off, right? So it's, if you say, oh, you're so burnt out, you need a day off, and they see that you are not modeling that, they are not going to believe you. And they're going to worry that you are going to judge them or think bad of them for taking a day off, and so they won't. That's the workaholic boss. The 6th one, I asked you, do your people have to email you a lot to get an answer from you? And if so, you might be in danger of being the absent boss. So the boss that is not accessible, that is unavailable. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're not physically there. It might mean that you're not physically there, but it might also mean that you are there, but are not accessible, are not available to the people around you. And so they have to ask a lot of times to get your attention. Medicine has come so far. Like the services the doctor's offices that they provide have come so far. So, there's mostly everything you can do now on some sort of patient portal. And I just established primary care here in Oregon since we moved here. And I was just amazed that I had my appointment with the doctor and she was like, so you're signed up for the portal. So if anything else comes up, just go ahead and message me. I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Just message you? And she's like, yeah, and if it's long, if it's a lot, I'm just going to tell you to schedule an appointment. But if it's not, then I'll make sure to get back to you as soon as I can. And my mind was just blown by that. And granted, I live in a much smaller area. Like I lived in a metropolitan area before, and now I live in a small city. So that may just be a luxury, of living in a smaller place. But I could not believe that the keys I had to the kingdom, to accessibility to the doctor, and the doctor wasn't WebMD, it was like an actual doctor, that accessibility. And so if I can have that accessibility to my doctor, but your team doesn't have accessibility to you who's in the next office, then friend, you might be the absent boss. And I think they just get harder and harder to be self-aware of as we go, because this last one is, does your team only share the things that are going well and not the things they're struggling with? And if so, that might be a sign that you are the judgy boss. Oh, I just tell you, they just get worse and worse as they go. This might mean that you struggle with empathy, right? That you look at what is happening with your team. They might be exhibiting some emotional behavior and you just think I don't have the bandwidth for that. They need to pull it together. Get on the bus or get off the bus. We say all these things, right? Just get over it, just move on, or we don't have time for this, or I don't want this drama. And although there may be unnecessary drama, when we don't even have the second to put on empathy and instead we look at the behavior and we make a character judgment on them, by the way, that's called the fundamental attribution error. And I have a whole podcast episode on this about not making assumptions about people. I'm going to link it below. You got to go listen to it. But if that happens often to you, that you feel like you have maybe a short fuse when it comes to people's reactions and emotions and responses, then You might be guilty of being the judgy boss. Whew, that was tiring. That was a lot. Are you okay? Okay. If you felt like any of those resonated with you, I want to say again, you are not alone, because I have resonated with most, if not all of those in different seasons of my leadership. It does not condemn you to being a forever bad boss, but it should be a red flag, that light on your dashboard that says, warning, warning, this could get bad, so let's do something about it. So I have an interesting insight, because I'm not going to leave you there. I'm not going to leave you feeling like that before we're done with this. Here is my insight. There is one thing that connects all 7 of those. One thing that connects all 7 signs, all 7 kinds of bosses. Can you guess what it is? I'm going to give you 3 seconds to think about it. Okay, time's up. Here it is. It is fear. It is fear that connects all 7 of those. The common denominator is fear. Let me explain. The micromanaging boss is afraid that the work is not going to get done the right way, or my way. The defensive boss hears the feedback, and they are afraid that they are a terrible person. They're afraid that they're a bad boss. The corner office boss is afraid that they will not be respected if they connect on a personal level. If they collaborate, they will lose their authority. The rear view mirror boss is afraid for their reputation, and that's why there's a propensity to blame, because their reputation is at stake, and that is scary. The workaholic boss is afraid that they will either be seen as lazy if they don't work all the time, or worse, that they will fail because the work is not getting done, because they're getting behind. It's this fear of getting behind and then ultimately failing. The absent boss can have one of 2 fear motivators. One is fear of being over-needed, of being bothered too much, and so they remove themselves because they just don't want to have to deal with the neediness. Or even worse, they are afraid of being found out. And what I mean is that sometimes there's an absent boss because there is an insecurity, that they don't know the answers, that they maybe feel not equipped. They don't feel equipped to do the job. And so because of that, they don't have the answer, so they're hiding. They're not giving the answer because they don't have the answer. And instead of admitting to that, they are absent. And so those fears are fear of being over-needed, being burdened by people's need, or fear of being found out. And then the judgy boss just has a fear of the emotional burden of others. They fear that they don't have the emotional bandwidth to give to these people, that will take away from the real work at hand. So is there hope? Is there hope for all of us bad bosses? Yes, the answer is always yes. There is always hope. So what's the hope? Where's the hope? Please, Kara, this is your most depressing podcast episode yet. Okay, here it is. The antidote to fear-based leadership is respect-based leadership. The opposite of fear is respect. Fear disempowers, but respect empowers. You have felt this, right? When you are afraid of your boss for some reason, you feel powerless. But when you feel respected by your boss, you feel empowered to do great work. Fear kills communication and creativity, and respect fuels. It gives life to communication and to creativity. When I feel respected, when I feel like my gifts are seen and known, then I can say the things, I can give the good ideas because I feel safe. I feel respected. Fear just shuts it down. Silence, no ideas, shuts it down. And finally, fear is a disguise. All these fears that are behind the behaviors of these boss types are just a disguise for what's actually going on. And respect, on the other hand, is genuine. So when you genuinely respect your people, it is no longer about you. When you feel those fears, replace it with respect. Those fears make us think that our leadership, our work is all about us. It's self-preservation. It's saying, I need to protect myself because I have all these fears, all these things that could happen, all these ways that these things are making me feel. But respect says, nope, I am genuinely going to see these people, that my leadership is going to be about others. Empathy is a prerequisite for leadership. So friends, if you resonate with any of those signs, you are not alone. There is hope. When you feel those fears, let it be a sign to you, like a nudge, to turn it into respect, to turn it from inward fear to outward respect. I'm going to close with a personal example. I, like many, struggle with anxiety, and this has gotten worse since my last pregnancy. I have had to learn new ways to cope with anxiety. And someone shared some good advice to me once that when I feel anxiety, like when I start to go down a trail where I am led by those feelings, that I stop and try to replace it with gratitude. And it's not a one-for-one. It's not a one-for-one. Like, okay, I'm anxious about this, so what should I be grateful for in that situation? It is compartmentalizing my anxiety and looking over here and saying, wow, look at how much I have to be thankful for. Like, I am so grateful for this and this and this and this, right? And I also am a person of faith. And so when I start to feel those anxieties, I can not only be grateful, but my gratitude can then turn into thanking God. It's not just general gratitude. It is praise for a God who loves me and has blessed me in so many ways that I don't deserve. And does it cure anxiety? Maybe not necessarily, but it shifts my focus. I suddenly am not stuck inside of myself. I'm not compartmentalized and trapped in this box where I feel sad and alone and depressed. Instead, I am seeing everything around me. I am looking out. I am others focused, and I am thankful and grateful for what I have and for what God has been so kind to bless me with. So that's just a personal example of how I can work imperfectly, but try to turn anxiety into gratitude. And in the same way, leader friend, you can turn fear into respect, and it will serve many. This was a hard one, guys. Thanks for sticking with me. I hope it is an encouragement to you. I hope that you can take from it and apply it to your leadership. If this helped you, would you let me know? Would you leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube, or will you leave me a rating and review on a podcast platform that you are on? That would help me so much to know that this helped you. I appreciate you, and let's talk more next time. Bye, friends.